Welcome to Deep Thought. Pay attention to different social groups. I'm going to tell you what, one of the things I've always done, I always pay attention to subcultures. This goes back to when I was working in the government, specifically at the United States Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, Disability Rights Section. Because the section had several people who were deaf. They were deaf, including a very brilliant attorney who was deaf and mute. And it was interesting chatting with him at, an office get-together because he was standing in front of me, moving his lips, looking me in the eye, and behind me was his interpreter basically speaking. And he was brilliant. I mean, he was brilliant. But one of the things I learned back there was about deaf culture. Because there are many people who are deaf, they don't see it as a disability, just a different way of being. Indeed, there's also autism. There's an autistic culture, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing. You know, they embrace their autism. They just see it as a different way of thinking. They don't have that cure mentality. And, and that's really, I'm going to tell you what, the experience with the deaf community, indeed, I could... there was a period I could actually sign a little bit. Since I'm totally out of practice, that was over 20 years ago. So the only thing I can sign now is thank you. But starting then, I really started paying attention to subcultures, social groups, stuff like that, right? And I'm going to tell you what, I'm thinking about everything that's happening now and thinking, okay, what type of social group will emerge? Like you do have one social group or movement. And just to be clear, they could be used interchangeably. Like some groups are very organized. Some groups are just a certain mindset and everything. But it could be, just understand they on the same page. I put it like that. But pay attention. Like one thing I can see emerging with everything going on now are minimalists. Minimalist. Like my oldest son is actually a minimalist. He don't really buy a lot of things. It's like the only thing is like you almost gotta like really press him just to get him a present for anything, even his birthday. Like he probably got a large savings. He don't spend money that much for anything except a snack here and there. But he's more of a minimalist. So is his mother, my co-parent. She's a minimalist. And, I'm thinking about everything happening now. What if that particular group emerges? You're having people with money, money issues and everything. One thing about minimalists, they don't buy a lot. They might have a few articles of clothing, just enough clothing to have a change every day. But, they might have three pairs of pants and 3 shirts and all of that. But they good with it. They have, where they live, they ain't going to have like the fancy bed or something. But, that could emerge even more with everything happening, especially people not working. They got to cut back on stuff, Or then you got other groups, they might be making a lot of money, like a lot of people making money as gamers. I mean, that's a social group. That's a subculture, It's so many angles to it. And the reason why I'm saying paying attention, because in these times, stuff emerges. Something emerges. Like, especially after a pandemic. See, I was looking at something. I saw an article about the last major pandemic this world faced, Spanish influenza, back around 1917 to 1919. And they said one thing that emerged afterwards, it was so much death, was an interest in spirituality. Like a strong interest. And when I say spirituality, not like the standard traditional, like people going to church, but people wanting to do psychic readings and seances and stuff because people wanted to contact loved ones. And I thought that was interesting because one of the things, when something is happening, especially on this scale, there's always a reaction. There's always a reaction, and people will respond to stuff differently. Indeed, I'm not going to get into like the political groups that's been emerging, getting stronger, both on the far right and the far left. But it's still something to pay attention to right there because, this is affecting politics itself. you know. Indeed, just one statement about politics, because, you know, people probably get more violent over politics than they do religion. Almost, though. They kind of neck and neck. But I wouldn't be surprised if a major political movement emerges within this decade. I could see something like a split from the, you know, traditional, well-known Republicans and Democrats. But that's another social group, because what social groups get together, these movements, political movements, they get together, what do? You know, they want to assert their power. So it's like, pay attention, because it affects you. It could affect how people buy stuff. Like, I'll tell you a rather benign political movement. Well, not political, sorry, using that term for this movement, but something I've been paying attention to, and that's the vegan population, vegan social group. Because I'm reading about how, you know, inflation, how all these meats are going up. And I was looking at a list of stuff, and they say, yeah, these foods are going up in price. And I looked at it, and my first thought was, vegans probably looking at that and laughing. It was like, well, we don't buy beef, or technical vegans don't even eat eggs. They don't even eat eggs. And indeed, you know, you might have some people who say, you know what, we're just going to eat fruits and vegetables. That's all we're going to eat. And please, you can trust me, you can get a lot from all of that. You can get a lot of food. I've seen some vegans who look like very well fed, even like they will look overweight. So you can get a lot from it. But think about how that would affect the economy if you had a major movement of vegans. Like, pay attention. Here's the thing with any social group. They affect the economy, they affect overall life, because they do things different. Think about a school system affected if you have a critical mass of people in a particular school system that say, hey, we're going to homeschool. And that's a viable movement in itself. Whenever you get a social group, if they're a tiny social group, not that much of an effect. But if you get a major movement, you get a critical mass. And it could just be hundreds of thousands of people in just the right place. You know, they changing their spending habits and everything. It affects a whole lot of stuff. It could affect even religious. Like, you got some religious groups that emerge. And there's a lot of mainstream religious, particularly Christian churches, not as full as they used to be, because there's a lot of younger people going into alternative paths. So that's a social group in itself. So I'm going to tell you the truth, and pay attention, because always pay attention to the major movements or major groups, anything. And it could be something small at first. But you never know. Like, there might have been a social group that was using Zoom before the pandemic, you know, for communication and stuff. And then this thing happens, all of a sudden it's major. Seriously, no matter how small, insignificant. You know, whenever I look at stuff, I always say, okay, how could this affect the long-term thing? Like I said about veganism, the vegan population, that could affect a whole lot of industries. Like, it would definitely affect the beef industry. Think about it. And that's just one example. The political movements, I mean, yeah, their example is obvious. You know, minimalists. You know, that's one. I mean, and I'm just throwing out, those are the ones I'm throwing out. There's thousands of groups out there, thousands. So it's something to think about. It's something to really think about, all right? So anyway, that's all I have for now. But really think about those things. I'll get back with y'all later. Peace and blessings.